Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days is an ugly game. Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days, released back in 2010, developed by IO Interactive. Yeah, that IO Interactive, the one which made all the Hitman games, and then this. And, of course, I would be remiss not to mention the original Kane and Lynch game, which released back in 2006. Dog Days released the fairly average reviews in the 4 to 6 star range. It actually scored similarly to its predecessor. Both this and the original game are 7th generation third-person combat shooters, so yes, you will be seeking the chest-high walls and you will be blind firing. But what really separates this game from its predecessor is the extremely unique visual styling. So imagine that the camera is a physical entity in the world. Well, Dog Days kinda does that. Of course it's not like an actual physical camera, it just acts like one. You sprint and the invisible cameraman has to run after you, it shakes up and down as the cameraman runs. It also kinda operates like an early 2000s digital handycam. It produces a soft image which is prone to digital fringing, especially on the furthest edges of the frame. Ceramic aberration also occurs. Digital blocking happens a lot too for that matter. Especially as the chaos picks up in frame, gunshots, explosions, and taking damage all result in digital corruption to the frame. Headshots are obscured with a sense of blur, and this is extremely interesting. This creates a more starkly brutal image. The brutality of this game is only exacerbated by this unique approach to styling, which is an interesting way to really make this game look starkly different to its predecessor, and for other games released at the same time. Producer Hakan Abrek, in an interview with Videogamer.com, said they had been inspired by Michael Mann, who directed 1995's Heat, and also by Blair Witch, although Blair Witch's influence is mainly pertaining to camera shake. Abrek then goes on to state that we wanted to make a real crime, a brutal crime shooter. What's real for us, for our generation, is user-generated stuff. It's a YouTube documentary. This active choice to make the camera more grounded by adjusting how the camera works is interesting. It does add something to the game. It does make it a much more grounded experience. But it is interesting how they chose to tie that direction to a game where you ride in the back of a helicopter and gun down an entire skyrise. And at the end of the day, this change really is just a filter and some aggressive camera shake added on top to spice it up. Let's change gears to graphics. This game, it doesn't look terrible by any means. It's not exactly a good looking game either, but it's fine enough that it won't interrupt the way you play. You have to remember that 2010 had a lot of games that still look pretty decent even now. Red Dead Redemption, Halo Reach, Alan Wake, so yeah. Dog Days is extremely average, but it does have the advantage of having that unique styling. One particular scene does showcase the subpar graphical quality, however. The models almost look like a roast pork just before you put it in the oven, so that's a thing, but effects are decent enough. Textures are fine, they're decent enough not to stand out, lighting is again decent. Looks fine, it looks decent, it's nothing special for 2010 and it doesn't impact your ability to play the game even today. Let's talk somewhat briefly about how the game sounds. Again, it's interesting, the handycam aesthetic of the game does rear its ugly head again. Everything that is loud in this game causes the audio to peak, and I mean everything. Gunshots, a car honking, explosions, every one character yells. It sounds broken. But returning to that Blair Witch analogy from before, the audio does actually remind me of Blair Witch. It does sound like a loud scene recorded on a shitty earlier digital handycam. And like, it works, and don't you worry, I don't think this game is flawless, because fuck, we haven't got to that bit yet. But in terms of visuals and audio, this game cannot really be faulted by a massive amount. I do think the dialogue sounds really strange, and I really don't know how much of this is the actual audio they recorded, and how much of it is the art design. I would wager it's fairly equal in blame, but does it sound bad? Nah, not really. It doesn't sound like it was recorded on Micro in 2007 Handycam. Yes, but I do believe that was the point of all that, so it gets a pass. And I do want to reiterate, because I don't think this game is perfect. It's like maybe a solid 6, because at the end of the day, the game is a lot more than how it looks and sounds. It has to play well, and the narrative has to at least be passable. And guess what? The gameplay and the story are so fucking weak in this game. They basically attached the Mona Lisa of edgy visual design to the Titanic, and I guess they expected it to float. But the mechanics present in this game are so dull. It's a cover-based shooter with no unique or even interesting gameplay mechanics, and I mean no unique mechanics. This game, for all intents and purposes, is just so bland and by the book. The only real reason to buy this game is to see the visual design, and most likely come to the same conclusion that I did. This unique visual design is utterly wasted on Kane and Lynch. But how? Let's discuss how the gameplay and narrative of Kane and Lynch is bad to average at best. So a cover-based shooter has a couple things that it needs to get right to be considered good in my eyes. A. Gunplay. B. Weapon variety. C. Cover system and movement. D. Environments. So, gunplay. What is it like? Subpar. I have a couple of problems with how the guns feel. I found that shotguns acted more like sniper rifles than they did shotguns. This, combined with the weird bullet spread at any distance greater than 2 meters, leads to shotguns being the only gun in the entire game that are worth it at all. Pistols are a close second because the bullet spread seemed to be lower, but so is their damage. The issue of using pistols stemmed from the fact that if your reticle was over an enemy, you would still miss, but you would miss just slightly less. For most of the game, I found myself dropping my assault rifle so I could pick up my sniper shotgun, and this again is because the shotguns actually fire straight. They don't spread like a shotgun should. Assault rifles and SMGs have such insane bullet spread, which basically makes them functionally useless at any distance that requires you to aim down sights. And to make this matter worse, the game even has sniper rifles, but they feel so clunky to use that a shotgun just makes more sense. But hey, the recoil on each weapon is actually so B on my list. Weapon variety. Well, you have your normal shooter affair, pistols, SMGs, shotguns, sniper rifles, LMGs. Each category has 2 or more. The pistols I think had 4, but I couldn't really tell the difference between them. Even between a semi-automatic 9mm to a revolver, they all seem to play the same and without any real difference. Maybe the revolvers were slightly higher damage and more accurate, but I literally couldn't tell. And this is a problem. A well-balanced and well-made shooter has weapons that all have a use. The 9mm pistol has a higher capacity, but lower damage, while the revolver has high damage but only a 6-round capacity. But for whatever reason, IO Interactive decided to make the revolver a 6-round 9mm pistol. And like I mentioned before, outside of a few particular weapons, you will be finding yourself sticking entirely to pistols and shotguns. But as you progress past the halfway point, you may find yourself picking up an assault rifle, as one of the 4 types of assault rifles is actually fairly accurate. Less than a shotgun, but more than the pistol. I did find myself pulling off headshots with the later game weapons, as they did just seem more accurate in general. But a tip from me, if you do intend on playing this game, avoid automatic stuff until the SWAT shows up. Anything before that point is just fucking useless, frankly. Because you won't hit anything with them. I did play most of the game on medium, so maybe that had an effect on it. But I don't know, I didn't play the other difficulties. I doubt it did, maybe it did. So C, cover and movement systems. You may have noticed in the footage that running causes extreme psychological and physical damage to your brain. You can turn this off, but I played with it on anyway. It's strange to say the least. If you yourself are playing, then it's fine. You don't feel sick. But if you're watching, it's fucking terrible. It's like being on a bloody roller coaster. I remember playing this with a game back on the 360, and since we did local co-op, it was split screen, so I could see the screen, and I vomited. This game is sickening to watch. It's slightly better to play, but I still don't recommend it. But in terms of the cover system, pretty much all the rest of the game, it's average and not noteworthy at all. You hit a button and you get into cover, you can change cover, you can blind fire, you can vault over the top of cover. Enemies use cover too, some cover is destructible, but I really didn't see much of that. It was mainly just wooden boxes being shot up for 5 minutes. So D, environments. Well, The game takes place in Shanghai and as such features a lot of streets and apartment buildings. The environments are not unique at all between missions, nor do they house any level-specific gimmicks. The only real gimmick within this game is the ability to pick up explosive canisters and throw them at enemies, then shoot them so they explode. And you will need to use this. This game loves sending out the entire criminal underground at you in a single fight. And this is fucking needed to help you. You cannot progress throughout this game because they throw so many enemies at you. You'll find yourself running out of ammo quicker than you killing them. This is why these explosive canisters, you will find yourself abusing them left, right and center for the entire duration of the game. They will help you clear rooms and the more difficult combat scenarios faster than anything else will. And I guess now we get into spoilers, so please leave now if you actually care about Kane and Lynch's adventure in China. And skip to this time code for my concluding thoughts with some minor level-based spoilers. So, where, who, and why? Well, Dog Days follows the events of the original Kane and Lynch game, which I never played, so I won't touch on it. In Dog Days we play as Lynch. The titular Kane and Lynch has split up, but neither has left their life of crime behind. Lynch works for Glazer, an old English crime boss in Shanghai. Lynch gets a job to transport weapons to Africa and calls his old friend Kane to help. He agrees, flies to Shanghai, and then the game begins. The game literally just kinda starts though. I had to gather all that from a Wikipedia article. In the game, there's like a cutscene with like some very unaudible dialogue, and then you're playing. So, yeah. Lynch tells Kane they have a quick errand to run, and thus they must go intimidate a local enforcer. During the conflict, the enforcer runs and we have to chase them. We shoot through waves and waves of gang members till we reach him. We accidentally shoot his girlfriend and then he kills himself. Nice. And as it turns out, this is the catalyst for the entire narrative, because that girl was the daughter of local big shot crime lord Shanxi. And the rest of the game is just them trying to get out of Shanghai to do this weapon deal. Until, dun 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 dun, Shanxi sends his men to kidnap and kill Lynch's wife, Zhao. They get kidnapped, Kane and Lynch are cut up with box cutters and they get turned into roast pork. And then the goal of the game then shifts to killing Shanxi, and well, you do it, and then you escape. It's a very, very typical revenge story. There's nothing to it at all. This game is the definition of ugly. In every way, the narrative, the visuals, audios, the characters, it's just ugly. And like, I know what they wanted to do here. They wanted to make this edgy, realistic crime shooter where a big, strong man cry about their wives dying. And I guess they were close, but I think in terms of a more grounded experience, this is a more grounded 7th generation console cover shooter game. But even in the same year, there were games which were more grounded. It feels strange to say that Mass Effect 2 is more grounded than a game set on Earth, but it is. Like, you board a helicopter and you shoot up a skyscraper. 2 naked men run around Shanghai and they shoot cops. IO Interactive, very obviously, wanted to make a game that was supposed to demonize violence and show the real effects of it, but they made a cover-based shooter instead. A game where you should mow down thousands upon thousands of nameless, faceless NPCs without any consequence. It's of such a weak experience. The only real saving grace of this game is the styling, and that's the only aspect where I see this aforementioned brutal crime shooter that produced a hack and Abric mentioned. The rest is just ugly and not unique in the slightest. It's not worth your money, even if it's on special. It's like, what, 2.5 hours long? I liked it at the start, because like, it was unique for a little bit, but then you just start doing the same shit as every other game, like in the same year, every other cover-based shooter. It's such a bland and average game in every way, and it's way too short to even pay $10 for. If you can get it on sale for $2, yeah, then you can make a case for it. But before that, don't even bother even thinking about buying this game. It's not worth it.